Verse 27, on the 14th night, 14 days, we were still being driven across the Adriatic Sea. When about midnight, the sailors sensed that they were approaching land. They took sounding and found that the water was 120 feet deep. A short time later, they took soundings again and found that it was 90 feet deep. Fearing that we would be dashed against the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for daylight. In their measurements of the depth of the water, it was signaling that disaster was at hand, because the shallower the water got meant that there was really no hope for the ship. And so after they've come to this reality, they drop 4 anchors and they do what they can only do. They prayed for daylight. And let me tell you something. When you're in the midst of surviving the storm, let me tell you, if you're determined to get to the other side, you're going to learn how to pray for daylight. And let me tell you what daylight is. Daylight is when you get clarity about which direction you are headed. That's why when the choir was singing, stand still until his will is clear. See, daylight is when you get clarity about what God really wants for you to do. And let me tell you what's gotten some of us in trouble. We've been too impetuous. We've been too erratic. We operated off of our emotions and feelings. And so we move before God said move. And if you move before God says move, what's going to happen is you'll create a bigger storm for yourself. Sometimes you've got to pray for daylight so that you can ask God, show me what it is you would have me to do. But see, let me tell you something. Here's one of my problems with how people sometimes treat prayer. Sometimes people treat prayer as if God is supposed to answer in the specific way that they ask. And then many folk don't want to do anything after they've prayed. Contrary to popular opinion, prayer is not the stopping point. Prayer is the launching pad. Y'all better hear me in the church today. So then if you are man or woman enough to pray and ask God for something, then you ought to be spiritual enough to pray a prayer that propels you to act. God, I'm asking you for such and such, but I'm committed to act on my part to fulfill my responsibility. It is not a one-sided relationship. Sometimes in the biblical narrative, if God was going to do something, he was going to do it once people did something. How do you know? If my people who are called by my name will do what? Humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn. But if you don't do this, then don't look for God to forgive the sin and heal the land, because he said, if you're going to pray, then you ought to be able to do this. And some of us, we need to pray for daylight with the commitment to do our part. God, reveal your will. God, make plain the path that you want me to walk in. God, I don't want to move too early, because if I move too early, I might get there and things haven't been prepared. How many folks know about moving too early? Some of us know about showing up at a hotel early. And we knew we were going to get early check-in. But when we got there, we found that there were no rooms prepared. Sometimes you have to get where you're going when you're supposed to get there so that things can be set in place. I told him this morning, I don't know how you feel about his athletics, but you cannot undermine his thinking. LeBron James, even before he left Cleveland to go to Miami the first time, he said he had to pray and get clarity from God. And here he is, he left to go to Miami, won those championships down there. He said then he had to pray for clarity about going going back to Cleveland. Now, some of y'all don't think nothing about that, but you remember how they treated him when he left Cleveland. There were folks burning his jerseys, calling him traitors, taking out signs on the highway, talking about, and who wants to go back to that kind of environment? But when God sends you on a divine assignment, whatever it is, you can take the heat that comes when you go back. When you have clarity about which steps you are to take, you can take hostility, you can take folk talking about you, because the truth be told, you go with a hedge of protection all around you. Parents, let me tell you something. Don't send your children to school without a hedge of protection. Don't you go to work without a hedge of protection. That protection is called the blood of Jesus Christ. And how many folks are glad about the power in the blood to cover you? But get clarity before you move. Tell somebody, get godly clarity before you move.